Hey, Bruce Naylor, your boomer consumer. Got to working on my setup, and I just added a C-stand and a new desk and some new lights. It's coming along. But I thought it would be time to make a Q&A video. I haven't done one of these in a while, so I thought, yeah, this would be a good time to do it. First question I have comes from Joseph Doyen, who says, Bruce, do you think it would be profitable for Apple to release a gaming Mac? I just heard Xbox Live is coming to iOS, Android, and the Nintendo Switch. Also, Google will be entering the gaming arena with their own hardware. I do not. Apple, that ship has sailed a long time ago for Apple. At one time, they actually did come out with a console. I believe it was codenamed Pippin or marketed as Pippin. This has been many years ago. Gaming is just not in Apple's DNA. It's not what they're known for. I think they would have a really hard time coming to market. You've got some very well-established players, and the future of gaming really is streaming games anyway, something like Netflix, where you pay so much a month and the games are streamed to your PC, and it really will be more or less hardware independent anyway. So I don't see that as being a smart move for Apple at all. Of course, and they never do anything on the cheap anyway. It just would be bad business for Apple, a huge waste of their resources. So that's my answer on that. The next question comes from, my life as a mom of 12 children. Whoa, 12 kids, whoa. Anyhow, she writes, what's your opinion on this one for vlogging? I bought it 3 years ago, the Samsung HMX F90 black camcorder with 2.7-inch LCD screen and HD video recording. Well, you bought it 3 years ago. By today's standards, it's pretty outdated. Looking at the specs of this camera, which coincidentally I've still found for sale for around $400, shoots 720p video, does not have a touch screen, it is very light at about 8 ounces total, and it has a 52 times optical zoom. So that being said, I just think there's way better alternatives for vlogging a camera, especially around $400 today. But here's the thing, go with what you got. And if that works for you, and if you're satisfied with the quality of video, and really a lot of people watch their video on their phones and on mobile devices, if you get an image that you like out of it and you're happy with it and you know how to use it, by all means, use it. By all means. You might find that even your phone may have a better camera than what you've got going on with that camcorder, but if I were looking today, there are certainly a lot better options in that $400 range, including the GoPro Hero 7 as a vlogging camera. That would probably be what I would be looking at around that price range. Or I would use my phone and maybe put it on some type of selfie stick or tripod, something of that nature. Hopefully that answers your question. Chris Rose asks, you seem a bit conflicted, Bruce. You ended up countering most of your positives about the Mac Mini with your dislikes. This is in reference to me purchasing a Mac Mini for working on my videos. Chris, what I try to be as fair and balanced as possible in any type of technology review that I do. There's good and bad. I mean, there's just no such thing as a absolutely perfect system. It just so happened that I wanted to be, as I said, fair and balanced on this. And there's some gotchas on the Mac Mini that it's important that people be aware of. And I wanted to present that in the video. But ultimately, it does a pretty doggone good job for me as is. And hopefully, I'll be making some more videos about the Mac Mini in the coming months. But for right now, it does exactly what I needed to do. But it's not perfect. And I'm not an Apple fanboy. It's just a particular tool that I like to use. Okay, the next question comes from Robert00770. What is a DSLR killer that can record DSLR footage with shallow depth of field, no recording limit, doesn't waste battery instantly, and is cheap? Well, I'm really glad you didn't put and records 4K at 60 frames per second with HDR as well. That's a really tall order. And let's just get around the operative word here, cheap, what you consider cheap. For example, if somebody that's paid for an Arri camera or a Red, something like those lines, 5-10 grand is dirt cheap. somebody that's maybe coming off of just using their phone camera looks at $1,000, $2,000, goes, that's too expensive. So I don't know what your definition of cheap is. As far as a DSLR killer, look at the alternatives to a DSLR. Let's remember they were designed originally to take photos, and then video capabilities were added later. And before the DSLR became all the rage in video, the camcorder reigned the supreme being in this world. And camcorders, basically, there's consumer, and then there's semi-professional, professional, and then cinema cameras are kind of a not really being super knowledgeable about them, but they appear to be somewhere as a medium between the DSLR and professional camcorder. They have more, you can take more cinematic video with one of these. Yeah, as far as, if you're looking, I don't know what price range you're discussing here, so what I may consider cheap, you may consider horribly overpriced. Now, I personally use a Sony AX100 I bought open box, I think for around $1,000. When you start talking about the no recording limit, this is typically going to be found in DSLRs that they have a recording limit, normally 30 minutes. It's because some rules from Europe and how they treat a camera as a camcorder after a certain recording time, and they pay a higher tax. There's a few mirrorless cameras out there with unlimited recording time. The GH5 comes to mind, maybe a few others. Ultimately, it's kind of a rare bird out there in a DSLR or even mirrorless camera to get unlimited recording time. So, when we start talking about depth of field, that's a little bit more tricky. It's kind of dependent on several different things. The distance of the target, the aperture, how much light's getting to the sensor, just a number of things affect depth of field, especially if you want that shallow cinematic look. Judging by your question, you're kind of interested in that look. Well, your typical consumer camcorders are going to have really small sensors in them, 1/3 of an inch, 1/2 inch, something like that, and it's much more difficult to get shallow depth of field out of that size sensor. It can be done if you know what you're doing and you have some type of control over the camera. So as far as a DSLR killer, I can't really recommend anything right off the bat, but I will say that you might consider a more prosumer camcorder with a larger sensor, like the Sony AX100. Canon has their line, Panasonic as well. But you really want that, at least a 1-inch sensor in your camcorder. You're going to want some type of manual control. Is it still a DSLR killer? No, I don't think so. DSLRs have their place, but predominantly as a photographic tool, whereas a video camera is dedicated to shooting video. And they were designed originally to do just that, run and gun video, whether it was documentaries, short films, news coverage, etc., events. And the kind of the artsy-fartsy depth of field wasn't really a consideration. And now you have cinema cameras. If one idea came to mind, I found a Canon C100, which is a cinema camera. It's a 5-year-old camera, shoots full HD video. One of those for around $1,200, and you can throw on a, say a 18 to 35, the Sigma, the 18 to 35 millimeter f1.8 lens, and man, you got a killer combo for around $2,000, which is dirt cheap and give you beautiful results in cinematic video with great bokeh, depth of field, whatever you want to call it. But I would certainly consider a prosumer camcorder and learning how to get that depth of field out of your machine. All right, thank you so much for your question, and I think that'll wrap up this Q&A session. Thank you so much for watching. Until the next one.